Gabe, are you on with us?
Hello, hello. Yes, I am.
Excellent. Sincerest apologies, having some technical difficulties over here among some other issues.
You're all
Um,
good.
Excellent. Uh, all right. A minute or two late. I'll sign us on. Hopefully, we'll have some people joining us as we get on. Welcome back to XR Talks with ARPost, an online publication focusing on immersive technology and the metaverse. I'm John Yaney, a contributor to ARPost and your host today. Joining me, we have Gabe Baker, the vice president of Frame, a web-based remote meeting and events platform available on mobile, desktop, and in VR. He's also the founder of Frame Academy, a program for helping teachers and students to create cross-platform 3D websites. Gabe, met just yesterday inside of Frame to talk about the platform's recent major update for an article that should be forthcoming on ARPost in the next couple of days. I feel like some of those updates are going to come into the conversation during our space today. Would you like to give a sort of brief intro to some of those updates in case anybody might have missed those?
Yeah, totally. And just at a high level, for those that don't know, Frame is just an easy way to kind of grab your own corner of the metaverse that runs right on the web browser from desktop, mobile, or VR. We put out a big 3.0 update, as John mentioned. Some of the key highlights: we've got better analytics to help you kind of track traffic in your space and kind of see who's doing what in there, like people are clicking on links or things like that. We've bumped up some of the rendering capabilities in Frame, so it's always a bit of a balance on the web between kind of graphical fidelity and performance. But if you want to get fancy with lights and shadows, you can now do that in Frame. And then we have some new full body avatars, which are our own kind of homegrown full body avatars, which you can opt into. We don't force it. I know uh, legs or not on avatars is a controversial topic, but we let you choose. So those are just some of the highlights. And if you want to see more, head over to the Frame blog. We have a big post about it as well.
All right. Many thanks for that. One of the things that came up in our conversation yesterday were a lot of the abilities that Frame has kind of always had. So maybe they weren't kind of played up to the degree that I think that they deserve in the update, which calls the update blog says that WebXR is the metaverse. So can we talk about some of these accessibility interoperability tools like embedding frames into websites and linking out to other immersive worlds from within Frame?
Yeah, definitely. And kind of philosophically, just what I mean by the web is the metaverse is, to me, the concept of the metaverse is all about different but connected destinations and being able to move between them. And when I think about that concept, the only thing that really comes close to it right now for me is the web browser, which is this kind of like portal that lives outside of like App Store, walled gardens that you can access on different devices and different platforms. And moving from one destination to the other is entirely easy, and it has been for decades. So with WebXR, kind of letting people create really powerful, immersive experiences that live right on the web, then to me, that's just like, well, right, the browser is kind of this like the overarching portal that lets people navigate between different destinations, some of them 3D, some of them 2D, but it is what it is. And then the fact you mentioned, because Frame is built with WebXR, it's easy for a frame to just be embedded in your own website inside of an iframe. There are some fancy little iframe properties you have to set to actually make it so someone in a headset could be viewing that page and then pop into full immersive mode, but they work. And so, yeah, let's say like you don't want like you want frame, but you want it on your own domain. You could just like plop your frame entirely into an iframe and just put that on your own website and be off to the races.
Can you talk about some of the benefits that tools like that are going to have as we get into more sort of accessible navigation and interfaces on VR? Because I know that there are some VR experiences that are web based. There are a lot of VR games. I'm trying to remember the name of the platform that I really like to find browser based VR games. But navigating the flat web in VR is so difficult with like controller inputs and things. But as we move towards hand tracking, that's going to be easier. Are we going to see like a future of 3D web development as accessing that content in 3D gets easier?
Uh, it's a good question. I think even with hands, like it's still going to be tough navigating around to different places. Like text input is still just fairly hard in VR, no matter what you're working with. I think voice is probably going to help a lot to some extent, but lots of URLs aren't exactly like common language words anyway, so it's not guaranteed. But I think Oculus is making a lot of moves around helping WebXR experiences sort of like be packaged like apps or like be bookmarked so that they're readily accessible. So when a user finds a WebXR experience that they want to have at their fingertips, so to speak, they'll be able to push a few buttons and do that, and then provide some interface that just makes it really easy to navigate between those different destinations that they've already kind of like pre-saved or pre-selected, so to speak. In terms of like moving from one immersive experience to another, another thing the Oculus browser team, and they're not alone in this, the Wolvik browser and others do this too, but they've made it now so you can kind of transition between one WebXR experience to another while staying in immersive mode, which wasn't the case for a while. It was like tucked behind this browser flag, and you had to jump through a few hoops to set that up. But I'm pretty sure now. I know that you can do it within the same domain, like moving from one frame to another. But we're either right at the cusp of, or it's already done, where you can actually just move from one WebXR experience to another without breaking immersion, which is really cool. You don't always have to be like toggling between VR mode as you bounce between one corner of the metaverse to another.
Yeah, I know that there are some people that I've seen in the WebXR space, the group doing the Poly Awards, for example. Polys are coming up this Sunday, actually. Um, and they've done some really interesting things with hopping from one 3D world to another. And I talked to them about it a while back, and they have their own sort of program for hiding these links, and then they have their special coding things that move them through. There's a kind of cool warp space effect in frame when you move from one to another. And the idea that those tools existed, but like the legwork to making those transitions so seamless is becoming part of the software instead of some magical coding thing. I feel like it gets at this whole idea of how creating 3D experiences is getting easier and easier for people, which is also something that came up in our conversation in Frame yesterday.
Yeah, well, we've added just a little bit of special sauce to Frame to make it even easier to kind of like move from one frame to another, just because we're in control of both of those destinations. It lets us have a little more control over that experience. So we did a lot of engineering to make it so it doesn't even need to load a new website. As you said, we just like trigger this animation. It appears like you kind of move through hyperspace for a while, and then you just kind of appear in the other environment. It took us a while to kind of figure that out, but our hope is that eventually it just really looks that easy and seamless to move back and forth between any destination in the metaverse. Whether it's Frame or Hubs or Spatial or anything else.
Kind of staying in the same vein, and I think that this is, excuse me, the reason that I talked to those good WebXR folks a while back. I wrote a piece on links between 3D web worlds being a key to a metaverse. And I think it was Tony Parisi commented on the article on Twitter saying that like those things have kind of been around for a really long time. and kind of tongue in cheek, like this isn't a new thing. Um, are some of the developments in hardware and maybe some of the developments in things like graphics and display maybe distracting us from some of these nuts and bolts tools that have always been there? Or is this a kind of thing that people, self included, might be kind of missing out on because all of these connected world things seem so new? Like, I've only been in the space for the last, I think, 8 or 9 years. Um, where is someone from your position viewing these things?
Well, it's there are a few things that have to come together to actually like make make these like seamless transitions between destinations or reality, and some of it is on the browser standards. Like they're always the Oculus browser team, they're always making little incremental steps towards this. Some of it then is on the experienced developers who go, oh, this new browser API is actually there. Let's actually like implement it in our application to make sure that it works. And then the other piece is actually making it so that people set up links between those different areas. Like in a lot of people just don't necessarily know about this because they don't necessarily have a frame that links out to space in hubs or a space in any of the other WebXR tools. So that's it's kind of a mentality that we're trying to cultivate, thinking of frame as just one little node in a much broader like metaverse. Is we want people to experiment with all the different tools out there. We know that, like for example, hubs is such a sophisticated, good tool, and for certain things, that's better than frame. And yeah, we think frame might be better for other certain things or users who might prioritize this other certain feature set or user interface, but at the end of the day, like people should use the tool that makes sense for that particular interaction. And yeah, I'm kind of getting off track here, but my point is there are browser standards, there are developers, and then there are people who actually just set up experiences that are intentionally designed to get people moving between those different tools and platforms and experiences. And I think we're right now at the place where we're starting to see frame users do this. Like, hey, I'm linking out to my hub space from here and to some other tool from there. And from what we've heard, like this actually works now from the browser, like being able to jump between them. But it's taken all those different pieces kind of moving together, sometimes one faster than the other before it all comes together.
Righto. As long as we're kind of spreading the love for other WebXR tools, I can't believe it hasn't come up yet, but Croquette is out there. They're the first ones that made embedding via iframe like really on my radar. It came up in our discussion yesterday. I kind of forgot that Frame could do that. I feel like it helps that kind of discoverability thing that you can be navigating a 2D web and suddenly find this window to another space.
Yeah, Croquet, they're awesome. I'm a big fan of their tool, and I loved their landing page. They have a great landing page now that lets you like kind of upload a few things, and they kind of do a lot of the magic behind the scenes to then spin up a space for you, like with some of those assets that you've uploaded, which I think is just it was such a good play for them. And that I'm shamelessly making a landing page that kind of kind of lets people do the same thing with Frame. Like you kind of you upload a few images if you want a 3D model, just like dead simple, and then we take that and spin up a little gallery with those things already in the right place. And as easy as we try to make frame, like, oh, it's once you're in frame, it's you bring in an image and it's so easy to try to get it on a wall. The reality is like it's never as easy as we think it is, having used it for years now. So their approach with Croquet is like, just upload some stuff and we'll do the magic for you and send you a link that you can embed on your own website. I thought that was super smart.
Uh, so far, we've been talking about strengths of the 3D web, but the more that I think about all of these like abilities and things that it has, all of these great ways to connect with people, I feel like there have to be reasons that not everyone is doing this. Uh, can you walk me through some of the challenges of the immersive web that native applications solve? And then, as a sort of follow up, do you think that 3D web is ever going to get to the point that we maybe don't need to be downloading applications on our hardware at all? It'll just be all web all the time.
A lot of good questions tucked in there. I think a lot of the reasons why you might choose one tool over the other, or building for the web versus building native, it often comes down to like the tools that you're already familiar with. So, I mean, someone who's already familiar with Unity 3D or Unreal, they're not majorly incentivized, I guess, to like maybe learn 3JS or Babylon JS or Play Canvas or these kind of like web building tools. They just want to use the tools that they know how to use already. Now, Unity is kind of interesting because it's a tool for building native applications, but it also does have this like WebGL exporter, which I think sort of works. It wouldn't surprise me if that's due for a big revamp with WebGPU kind of in the pipelines for browsers. Um, Now, if you're coming at it less from a what should I build with based on what I'm familiar with, and more about like what should I build with based on what I'm trying to build and how I, like my audience and things like that. Like you might come at it just knowing that you need your experience to be built for the web, that you need it to be accessible from a web browser. Maybe you'd like to be able to hire people to work on it who are web developers. This is like another thing. It's a lot easier to find web developers out there right now than it is to find Unity or Unreal developers who are constantly in like really high demand. So I think a lot of things go into the decision, and then it's also the case still that native applications can just take advantage of a device's like hardware right now in a way that the browser being like single threaded can't really. So if the experience you're building is like really kind of maxed out graphically, then native may very well make sense, and you might just decide that that's the priority over accessibility from the web and so forth. Now, whether the web will catch up, I think the I think generally speaking, like yes, there's a lot of controversy in the web like browser space about whether web browsers should even be trying to do this stuff to begin with, and yeah, I kind of think they should. That's I'm obviously biased with WebGPU in the pipes, and for those that don't know, WebGPU is like the successor to WebGL2, which is some of the underlying tech that makes all this 3D stuff in the browser work. WebGPU is like coming to Chrome soon, which means it'll come to Edge soon. The big open question is whether it will come to Safari soon. Safari was about 5 years late, really, to WebGL2, and I still think their WebGL2 support is sort of janky in some ways. But I think that if WebGPU becomes really mainstream in browsers, that really does kind of like elevate what can be achieved in the browser from a graphical perspective in pretty significant ways. And Frame, of course, is going to be in a prime position to leverage WebGPU. We build with Babylon JS, which is an open source 3D development framework from Microsoft, and they've been anticipating WebGPU for quite some time, so that like when it's ready to go, it's it's going to be something that we can take advantage of. And it wouldn't surprise me if Unity 3D ended up overhauling their WebGL exporter to make it so that you could have like a web GPU export of what you build with Unity. And kind of looping back to that question of why you would build for native or for WebXR, it's true that like Unity and Unreal just provide something a little bit different than the common 3D web development frameworks, and that is like a game engine, and which it's like a piece of software that's like specifically designed to give you this visual interface for manipulating your scene. And yes, of course, you can write code, but when we're writing like our Babylon code, we don't really have like a piece of software like Unity that we can open up that helps us kind of like visualize everything and put all the pieces together. We're just kind of like writing JavaScript code and TypeScript code and then seeing it work in the browser. Now there is a tool for WebXR that I think kind of like bridges the gap a little bit. It's kind of like a WebXR like 3D game engine for the web, and that's Play Canvas. And Play Canvas is super interesting for anyone just like interested in this space. Play Canvas to me is like the closest thing to like a Unity 3D, but for 3D web development, and it's definitely worth checking out. Sorry, I rambled around a lot there, John, but hopefully touched on some of what you asked.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciated the background on WebGPU too. I like I said, I came into this space through conventional journalism, and I consider myself very much a sort of like beat journalist of the metaverse. So like I'm writing about emerging tech, but I'm also writing about it in a way of like covering things that just happened. So things that are right around the corner often kind of catch me off guard. And WebGPU is definitely one of those things that like if it's coming in 3 days, I'm going to be writing about it 4 days from now. I'm always like a just on the step. But that's okay. I'm very wary of kind of predicting the future, which is a dangerous place
Definitely.
for me. Um, but that in mind, as I just said, I'm afraid to predict the future. We're talking about whether these native application tools and web is ever going to catch up. I don't want to make every conversation on this Twitter space about AI, but as we were talking yesterday about generative AI. Like, is that the kind of tool that's going to make it easier? That's going to kind of bridge the gap as well between tools used to build web and tools used to build apps.
Yeah, I think AI is going to be very big. It's a space that it's like vacuuming up tons of attention right now, and I think rightfully so, just because it's it's already moved beyond like just this kind of like hype train space where now we're actually seeing things out there in the wild powered by AI that are having like significant real world impact um, on lots of different fields and lots of different spaces, and not just Chat GPT, which is huge and I think very, very impressive in a lot of ways, but specifically for these artist workflows, whether you're creating 360 photos or 3D models or what have you, like these tools now are getting very sophisticated and like they're here. Like there's a tool from this company Blockade Labs that lets you just type in a few words to create a really nice like 360 photo and in the format that works very well in frame. You can just bring it right into frame and have that be your like panoramic 360 sphere in the background of your frame. There are tools that are just starting to get good around like text to 3D, where you put in some text and then it spits out a 3D model. They're not quite there yet. Those are still more like kind of toys in my mind. The ones that are really good right now, though, are uh, tools like you can open up Blender, which is a really sophisticated 3D design software, and there are tools like built into Blender that help you like help artists texture a scene, like texture a mesh, without needing to like create that texture by hand. You kind of like type in like, hey, I want like a dark toned wood with a bit of glossiness, and then next thing you know, like that the table that they've modeled like has that texture, and like those tools are here today, and people are already using them to like accelerate their workflows. So I think they'll range from like tools that help already sophisticated artists work faster, and then tools that help those that might not be technical at all or ever need to open up Blender at all, even do their own like level of creation. And we did a demo with Frame last year at Microsoft Build. It was awesome, like introduced by the CTO of Microsoft, where we did a little demo called like speaking things into existence, where like two people are in frame and they're talking,
Yeah.
and it just uses this AI engine codex to like write Babylon code on the fly and then inject that into the frame scene, and it was super cool. We were like on the moon and putting together like a little classroom on the moon just by talking. And I think these things are very much like going to be big. We're going to see a lot of people who might not otherwise have been able to like bring their vision to life, and we're going to see them now like able to do that to a large extent. So I think it's an exciting time to like to be a creator. Just it's an exciting time to have ideas. I think, especially just like in this space where previously to bring an idea to life, it would be very hard. You'd have to bring a lot of people into the mix or learn a piece of software. But now with some of these tools, like you'll just be able to kind of bring it to life. Now there are a lot of like important ethical questions around these AI tools that are kind of like beyond the scope of this conversation, but I can see why some are also like wary of the way that these tools work and how it is that they actually do the magic that they're doing, which to a large extent is like combing through uh, a history of other people's work, and that alone is kind of troubling in some ways, or at least, at the very least, like worthy of some thought and consideration.
Right. No. Immersive web is one of my favorite topics in emerging tech, and AI is something that I always need to learn more about, and I'm really glad to have those conversations. I'm sure that this could go on for ages in any direction, but we're getting down to time here. We're scheduled to close at 2:30. Um, so, can you tell listeners how to get in touch with you, how to get in touch with Frame? Where are you online these days?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, we're on Twitter here. You can DM me on Twitter. I encourage you to check out Frame itself. Just head to framevr.io. It'll let you kind of like quickly create your own space in a matter of seconds, and then you can be in there. Once you're poking around Frame, you'll see a link to the Frame Discord. I'm always on the Frame Discord, like giving people support, and there's a big community of Frame users and Metaverse enthusiasts on our Discord. So if you're interested in this space, I certainly encourage you to check it out. And if you prefer email, just hit me up. I'm just Gabe at framevr.io.
All right. Many thanks. And for anyone listening right now live, as Gabriel is a co-host, I believe that there should be a special button for you to follow him directly if you're not already. That should be true of ARPost as well. That should be true of John Yaney as well. I'm speaking on the ARPost Twitter, but I always have myself as a co-host in case things go wrong and I've got to troubleshoot something on another device. I saw some people jumping into the space a little late, so I would like to remind people as well that this space is being recorded, so you can listen to it on Twitter later, but we also have a channel up now so that these recordings are going on YouTube, so you can find ARPost on YouTube and listen to these episodes there. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So find us wherever you spend time online or directly at arpost.co for articles as they publish. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Gabriel, for co-hosting with me. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with Kenneth Landau of Metaverse, an app, a VR immersive spaces app. So maybe the conversation will be flipped a little bit when he joins us.
Cool. Thanks for having me, John.
Thanks for coming. Thanks everybody for coming and for listening. Take care, all.